After a pandemic-related pause, M&A activity among CPA firms is red hot. This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Marketing Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. In 2020, merger and acquisition activity slumped because of the COVID-19 pandemic. By some estimates, the market for CPA firms was the slowest in nearly 30 years. Firms were reluctant to make deals remotely, and negotiations that had started before the pandemic initially came to a screeching halt. But that led to pent-up demand, leading many firms to pursue M&A deals once the pandemic slowed in 2021. Here with me to discuss the rebounding M&A market is NJCPA member Joe Tarasco. Joe is CEO of Accountants Advisory Group, an NJCPA partner company and a leader in consulting CPA firms on mergers and acquisitions, partner governance, practice management, marketing, and human capital. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Don. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for asking. So let's jump right in. So what are you seeing nationally in M&A activity, and more specifically, what are you seeing in New Jersey?
There's a complete surge, and I can only say it's pure insanity. I've never seen so many. You were talking about pent-up demand. You have no idea how pent up it was. And what we're seeing is a number of deals happening simultaneously, even with the same buyers. So you could have a large buyer and even a medium-sized buyer, small buyers. They're all looking at multiple deals at one time. Now, let's put another dynamic in here. Private equity, Eisner Amper, New York, New Jersey firm. Okay, wait till you see what happens once they start spending all that money that they receive from the private equity company and start to buy up firms and make investments in advisory services. I just received an email from a New Jersey firm, Hafley Flanagan, South New Jersey. They just acquired an advisory service, Trilogy Partners, to add to their repertoire of services and industry types of advisory. So specifically in New Jersey, what we're seeing is a large number of small firms coming to the marketplace. These firms pre-COVID were not interested in merging. So what happens with COVID now? Burnout. The technology worked, but it was all the other logistics and management problems. They're not waiting for the next pandemic. They're coming to the market now. And to sum it up, it's not only succession, it's a matter of gaining resources to sustain their quality client services, to be able to attract staff. You know, we're all involved with the Great Resignation. We don't know where these people are going.
Right.
And so, you know, it's resources for succession. And what we're seeing, it's not just the immediate next level of succession. So it's not just transitioning to other partners. The partners are there to take over the work, but the partners don't have the support level below them. And this is creating this surge of selling and certainly of buying.
Right. So I was going to ask, what are the top three things driving M&A transactions today? You mentioned one of them, succession and succession resources. What are some of the other things that are driving transactions today?
Yeah, you know, another big one is leadership. So you have founders and maybe second generation founders who came right after the original founders. And so they've not created a leadership next generation. A lot of them were concerned, and rightfully so, with having another layer of client service. Okay, but it wasn't that, you know. And look, New Jersey's doing a lot today in terms of leadership development, and it's really needed. I would say I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to repeat it again. It is, it's not only finding talent, it's the cost of talent.
Right.
These costs, direct labor costs today at a lot of these firms are almost 50% of revenues. That was unheard of 10 years ago. It was the old 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So how do you retain your clients, sustain your business, provide quality services to your clients without raising fees to the extent that now you may even lose those clients because the fees are just way too expensive for them.
Right. So is it this next question is kind of goes to my own personal experiences because I'm currently buying and selling a house right now.
Right.
So they talk a lot about the housing market being a seller's market. So I'm just curious, for M&A transactions, is it a buyer's or a seller's market right now?
So it really depends at what size level you are. If you're in the top 50 firms, are you in the top 300 firms? So I would say that at the bottom, at the $3, $4, $5 million range, it's a buyer's market because these firms are on the market because they have voids. Mostly the void is talent. Now you're asking someone to buy you, replace that talent, okay, fund the cost for that talent. And what does that do? It affects the valuation of the firm. And these valuations for these smaller firms are going down because the buyers have to make a tremendous investment into capacity that these firms don't have. So I'll give you a perfect example. What we see quite often is, let's take a 3-4 partner firm. They've lost staff over the years, haven't been able to replace them. So now you have the partners and doing senior level work, maybe supervisor level work. And you have 2 out of the 4 partners looking to retire. And the buyer has to fund that. Not only fund the cost of replacing the partner, but the undercapacity in the at the firm. Now, if you go to, let's jump to 25, 30, $40 million types of practices that are on the market, that's certainly a seller's market because there's just not enough of those right now in the marketplace that are selling. So once they come on the market, they can basically pick and choose the buyer.
Okay. Now I'm curious, you've talked a lot about talent, and that's clearly a big issue in the accounting profession these days. So I'm curious, when somebody goes out looking for a firm to merge with or looking for a firm to buy, obviously, as you were saying, talent is a big consideration. When they look at the talent pool of the firm they're interested in buying or merging with, what type of qualifications are they looking for? Are they looking for experience? Are they looking for skill set? All of the above?
It's all of the above, but I would say the talent today is really a point that they're looking at in terms of, okay, who are the next generation in this firm that can help our firm with our succession plan. So it's not necessarily we're buying this firm and we're keeping it as a unit. No, we're not. Okay. We're looking at it. Can this firm add to and complement to the services that we have? Do we see future talent that could be even leadership in our firm, even for large firms? So yes, the days of looking at talent and looking at it as a cost is over. It's really now a resource and it's a demand that they're looking for in terms of whether or not it makes sense to purchase this firm.
And that seems to be a big change, because I think historically, my limited experience with this, historically always seemed to be about the client base. How many clients do you have? How much work do you do? But yeah, the talent clearly is an important consideration these days. So one other question on what I introduced this segment by talking about the pent up demand caused by COVID-19. I'm curious what other impacts COVID-19 has had on the M&A market, and specifically with so many people now working from home and comfortable working from home, how are firms evaluating possible mergers or acquisitions when they look at the space that the possible partner may have? Like how is that factoring into these mergers and acquisitions these days?
It's a big issue. And we advise firms that are looking to sell in the future, don't renew your lease. Okay, if your lease
Wow.
is right, if you're right, go on a month to month, even if you have to pay a premium. Because if you're going to invest in a 5, 8, 10-year lease, that could limit your ability to sell to a firm that perhaps already has a location in your area, which probably is very likely. So that really is a driving force. But the other factor too is there's a tremendous amount of potential new work out there for accounting firms that they are not able to bring into their firms because they just don't have the capacity. But that has really nothing, you're right, that has nothing to do with space today. And in fact, I would say on average that a lot of firms probably need about 30, 40% less space, maybe even 50% less space than they needed in the past. You see what's happening at the Big Four. They're coming out and saying, okay, you can you can work remote.
Right.
Yeah. So where is that going to leave the smaller firms? Well, that's less of an issue if you're not selling. But if you're going to put your firm on the market in the near future, it's definitely a huge issue. Look, I'm working on a deal right now, a very large deal, and there's 3 leases involved because they have 3 locations. And it's becoming a big issue with the buyers. And we need to find the right buyer that fits into that model and that geographic location where they would need those 3 locations. So we're probably looking at a buyer that is coming from a different part of the country, not someone that's local.
Right. So the issue of talent, the issue of office space, and just sort of the general market, what is that doing to valuations that you're seeing in the marketplace right now?
It's driving valuations down. We're seeing valuations sometimes, and it's sad, as low as 50%.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say on average it's around 0.75, 75% of revenues. And that's because the buyers have to make a huge investment today into the seller's firms, especially those where partners are working ridiculous amounts of chargeable hours. We see some 2, 3, 4, 5 partner firms, and most of this is with the smaller segments, but they're working 2,000 chargeable hours. How do you replace 2,000? Right.
Wow.
Now, it may not be only partner work, but you still need to replace that work. It's productive work. So most buyers are looking at this. Number one, can I keep their clients if I have to replace that type of time? So certainly a lot of these smaller deals are done on retention, but even the buyers are not looking to lose clients, even though they don't have to pay the buyer for that in the future. That's not the point. Why do the deal if you're going to lose clients?
Right.
Yeah. it makes no sense. So valuations, unfortunately, are going down. And my suggestion to sellers, especially future sellers, is to maintain and increase the value in your firms by doing what you can to retain your talent, use leverage as much as possible so that the partners are not doing lower level work and are not accumulating large hours that have to be replaced. I know that's easier said than done, but you really have to look at value versus volume here. So a lot of the buyers today are not looking to add to the top line, as we've been talking about. They're looking at these M&A deals more of a strategic type of transaction rather than, okay, bigger is better. That's not necessarily so today.
They're looking to add something that they don't currently possess, whether it's
Right.
talent
So whether
or a
it's
particular niche or
location,
something.
right, location, talent, it could be specialty services, industry expertise. It's more of a strategy than just a maybe I'm going to increase my ranking in the next
Right.
right in the next Inside Public Accounting or Accounting Today listing.
Right. So do you work with some clients who are sellers who are disappointed or maybe even frustrated when you tell them that perhaps their firm isn't quite what they thought it was?
Yes, but it's getting out into the marketplace now, but we do sit down with our sellers and we're very frank with them. Okay? And we look at the pros and cons of their practices. And in some cases, we even tell them, listen, if you can hold out for another couple of years, or at least a year, we can help you sort of, you brought up real estate, okay, get the house in order. Okay, before you go out into the marketplace and get disappointed with the price. And here's what you need to do. And sometimes it's not that difficult. Look, I hate to say it, but in many cases, these firms are over partnered.
Right.
And that's the last thing a buyer wants to start negotiations with. So another thing that we tell sellers is one of the reasons you're coming to the marketplace is you didn't make those hard decisions that you needed to in the past about managing your practice. You're better off making those decisions before you go out into the marketplace and let the buyer make them for you. Because in many cases, the buyer wants you to make it pre-merger. They don't want to take on a firm and have to do all the dirty work, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Now earlier in the interview, you talked about private equity. I wanted to ask you about that. So back in August, more than a few eyebrows were raised when news broke that Towerbrook Capital Partners had struck a deal to purchase an ownership interest in Eisner Amper. And that was the first such deal between a private equity concern and a top 20 accounting firm. So can we expect to see more deals like that?
Yes, there's strong rumors that another New York, New Jersey firm has struck a deal with the private equity firm. I'm not going to mention names, but it's a strong rumor. So yes, you'll probably see an announcement, I would say, in the next week or two. And I would expect that even from a competitive level, other top 20, 25 firms, top 50 firms will take on that type of model. Now, if you've read, so I'm not disclosing anything that's confidential. If you've read some of the articles that have been, or even interviews with Charlie Weinstein, the CEO, he's been very transparent as much as he can. It also was about resources. So what's happening at these larger firms, and certainly it's happening at a much higher level than it is at smaller firms. But in order to compete in the top 25, top 30, okay, and you know, a lot of these firms are at 300-400 million and get to $1 billion. Okay, they need capital. Don't forget, okay, once you get to that level, the amount of resources and investments that you need go far beyond what the partners are willing to take out of their pockets,
Right.
to provide. And look, these firms, yes, they're accounting practices, but they're big businesses. They own advisory firms. They own other divisions in terms of services that complement their industries. So yeah, they can't go out and get public money. So they've done the next best thing.
Now, Eisner's a top 20 accounting firm. How long do you think it'll be before we start seeing private equity deals in the, the top 300, 400, 500 firms before it starts trickling down to that level?
Yeah, I'm not sure if private equity works at the lower levels, at the 5, 10, 15, 20 million. Because it's really driven by revenues and EBITDA, and look, these private equity deals, they're done obviously to make money for the private equity investors, and part of the structure is sooner or later they're going to flip those, and they're going to flip them to a larger private equity firm. So it doesn't really work at the low levels. Plus, part of the model is that the partners get cash and equity up front, but there's also a give back and compensation. So at the lower levels, that give back typically is not going to work. There's just not enough profitability in the firm.
Okay. By the way, if you wanted to reveal who's going to be part of that announcement soon, we could blur your face out and change your voice so no one would know it was you.
No way, they know where I live.
That's true. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. And I'm assuming that the interest in an Eisner Amper or any firm of that size from private equity probably is more so on their advisory side than it is on the traditional tax and audit side. Because the advisory practices, AICPA recently put out a study that showed significant growth in advisory services across the board. So I'm assuming that's where the private equity interest is coming from, on the advisory side, more so than the traditional sides of the business.
That's very true. However, and this is me speaking now, not Eisner Amper or anybody else.
Sure.
I think you will see now that the private equity will build traditional firms around them, but they're going to be within that top 50. So they will acquire $100 million firms, $150 million firms. They may go to, you'll see exceptions. They will acquire maybe 10, 15, $20 million firms if there's a specialty. So if there's a $20 million firm, $30 million firm that has a specialty in hedge funds, okay, and they want to build that practice, and that particular firm is okay with rolling into an existing location, yes, it will happen. Okay, but no, you will see the top 50 firms involved in M&A through private equity, especially from the players that get in there first.
Okay. Now, we've talked a lot about sellers. What suggestions do you have for firms that are new to M&A and they're looking to acquire firms?
Yeah, one of the suggestions that I'm making, and it's actually it's fairly new in the last, I would say 6 months, is to do your preliminary due diligence, even if you have to bring in a third party. Now, what do I mean by a third party? So even if you have to bring in peer review professionals or quality control professionals, don't wait. Typically, buyers will put together a MOU that may take 60, 90 days to negotiate. And they feel that at that point, the seller is committed. So they wait to do the due diligence. I wouldn't wait, because what we're finding is that some of these sellers have quality issues, okay, that could affect the valuation. Okay. You don't want to have to go in and adjust the valuation in the closing documents from the original MOU. So go in, hire a third party if you don't have the time or bodies to do it. Take a look at what you're buying first. Okay, not just the financial statements, not just the PKIs, not just the statistics. Get in there. So that's number one. The other one is that I would have patience. Okay, everybody's in a rush to make a deal.
Right.
Right. Take a step back. Make sure that it, either it's a game changer for you, it adds more value, it complements what you're already doing. So okay, it brings talent, all the things that we said before. And wait, don't jump. And that's sometimes we see this and we have to tell buyers, just okay, hold off. It will come. The other thing is, make sure your partners are on the same page. And if you're in a partner meeting and you're presenting criteria, which we strongly suggest that you come up with 5, 6, 7 criteria for the type of firm you want to buy. Make sure your partners buy in, and yes doesn't always mean yes. You need to speak to your partners. Okay, people don't like to say no in a partner meeting, right? Okay, it happens in all businesses. Okay? You need to speak to them privately. So make sure you get partner buy-in, and make sure you designate more than one person to get involved in this. It's a very time-consuming type of initiative, okay? And sometimes the managing partners get worn down by it, especially in maybe firms that are less than 15 million or so, that don't have controllers and CFOs to help out.
Okay. So what do you see for the future of M&A activity in the next few years and beyond?
Yeah, I think you're going to see this surge continue. I think what you're going to see is a shift. So instead of having all these small firms, local firms, the local firms will get larger. The regional firms will start to spread out to become mega regionals, meaning that instead of being just an East Coast, all right, you'll have an East Coast and a West Coast. And we're already seeing it. And we're already working with firms that are really all about the East Coast, and now they're looking to venture into the West Coast. You're going to see more of that. So what you're going to see is many national firms coming out of these deals. I think you're also going to see a big five arise.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a bold prediction, right? And you can quote me on that, right? So no, seriously, look, you have a lot of firms at the top. You have the BDOs, you have the McGladrys, you have the Grants, you have the Baker Tillys. These are all firms that are in the billions now, and then you have what we call the third tier firms. You have the Eisner Amper, the Citron Coopermans, the Markhams. Okay, so what's happening now? They're all buying up firms throughout the country. Okay, now they're in each other's backyards in areas that they've never dreamed of being in. Now, how many firms do you need of that size? Even though the offices are smaller, but still, okay, they're competing with each other. So I'm guessing also that third tier is going to come together at some point, right? Hey, listen, it used to be a big eight, right?
Right.
Right. So what I'm saying is not that far-fetched. It's just that we haven't seen that type of activity in a long time. But don't forget, now we have private equity involved. Okay, so they're going to come on the scene, with that. But don't forget, there's 40,000 firms in this country. only 15,000 of the 40 are multi-partner firms. So this is really a industry. It's a profession, but it's more of an industry now of very small businesses. And these businesses can't survive with this large firm competition. And it's not only for clients, it's for staff. Okay. And, the staff is going to gravitate. Oh, wait a minute. If I become a partner, I get equity in a private equity firm. Wow. Okay. What are you giving me? Right. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when that next firm, or when we finally have a big five, we're going to replay this podcast, and we're going to say our members heard it here first.
There you go.
You'll be our new Nostradamus. We'll have you on for regular segments where you'll just make predictions about things. So
you'll have to put me on the cover of New Jersey Magazine.
You betcha. All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a fascinating topic. And we'll probably have you on in the future as well, because I don't think this is going to go away, as you were saying. And also we also want to thank you for all your support of the NJCPA over the years.
My pleasure. Thank you, Don. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening and watching. To learn more about the services that Joe and his team at Accountants Advisory Group provide to NJCPA members, visit njcpa.org/marketplace and visit njcpa.org/classifieds to see M&A classified ads or to place your own ad.